I consider myself a portrait photographer, and I started making portraits of people, and then fairly quickly, actually after working with Richard Avedon for a year in 1985-86, I came back to San Francisco and became very passionate about making, really, whether or not it would be possible to make a portrait of a plant or an animal that that could evoke a kind of emotional response in the viewer the way a good portrait of a person can. The thing about gravures, I always loved black and white gravures, and I never really even knew about color photogravures. I sort of imagined them, but I never had seen them. But I always loved black and white gravures and dreamed of being able to make them one day because of the beauty of the blacks, this velvet, deep, rich black that you really can't get even with the gelatin silver print or even with a dye transfer because of the surface reflection of the paper. When we started this project here at Crown Point, it was in some ways really experimental because what we wanted to achieve, which was an in-register, beautiful rendering of color images as well as black and white. We weren't entirely sure we would be able to achieve that. And it was an amazing adventure and very rewarding when we finally got prints that we all really felt good about and that were just so beautiful. So for me as a photographer, it's a new identity for these images because some of them have been printed in other media before. And so it's not the same thing. It's not, to me, it's not really, in some ways it's not really a photograph. It's a photogravure. So it's most closely aligned with dye transfers in that way, is that it becomes a new identity for the image. And a lot of that for me has to do with the paper and the impression and the fact that the inks actually sink into the paper. So they sink into it like a sponge or something. And seeing these prints come up on the press, it was this really beautiful thing that would happen on the press. And then I'd look and I'd think, and they would come up on the wall wet, and I would look at it and I'd think, okay. And then I'd have to take a deep breath and think, what does this image need? Does it need, what can we do here? Can we make it? And I would ask, what is this process capable of? Can this be darker? Can this be lighter? Can we restrict the color to here instead of bleeding over into here? Can we, like this, how big should it be? You know, how big should the paper be? So there are all these decisions that would happen, and I was leading a lot of those decisions, but really participating in trying to figure out what the medium was capable of. I think that was the most wonderful part of the discovery of it, was pushing it and pulling it and seeing, and we had the time that it took to get there. I mean, I think, you know, in this day and age, if